So this class is both online and in the classroom. I will, whether anybody shows up or not, I'll still be lecturing. That's the way it'll work. This class is the same as all my other classes. I decided to go with 3 tests. So there will be 3 tests at different times during the semester. First, third, after the, I don't know, 5th week, I guess, the 10th week, and then a final. They won't be accumulative. It'll be whatever material we've covered lately. Anyway, I like this class. I always have fun in this class. Now because I'm going to offend everybody. Though I probably will. So there's discussion questions to answer. There are the 3 tests, and then there's the paper. Here comes Denise. So that's good news. Well, this is the chairs are on the wrong side. And this is turned around the wrong, isn't it? Oh, I guess it's right. I don't know. Anyway, okay, so 3 tests, a paper, and the discussion questions, that's it. What do we need to know? Oh, I want you to write a paper, I want you to write a paper on another culture, comparing it with the Dene culture. That's what I want you to do. My idea is that you learn more about your culture if you compare it with another culture. How's that? How's that for rationalization? Okay. It can be any culture you want. It can be another native culture, if you want, another indigenous culture. People liked it to do their papers on Mongolia for some reason. I haven't figured that one out yet. You can do it on Korea if you're a K-popper. Or Japan if you're a J-popper. See, I know, I'm cool, I know all this stuff. J-pop and K-pop, get it? I'm with it. Anyway, so you can make it on any culture you want. I have a book, I want you to read a book. How about that? I want you to read a book. It can be a fiction, it can be nonfiction, doesn't really make any difference, just a book that describes another culture. I've got a bunch of books in my office that I'll lend you. Last semester I lent out some books and most of them haven't come back to me yet, which is a tragedy, but I'll assume they'll come back eventually. So I want you to read a book. It can be a big book, can be a little book, that really doesn't make any difference. You can do it on another native tribe. I've got a book about the Standing Rock Sioux. I've got a book about the Crow. What else do I have? I have a book about the Meskwaki. If you know what the Meskwaki is. Anybody know what the Meskwaki is? It's a fox tribe. They live in Iowa. As strange and weird as that may be. So you can make it, if you have ancestry that is not Navajo, you can write it on whatever that group is. It's okay. Anybody but white people. Western culture. I don't want you to compare Dene culture with Western culture. We do that all the time anyway. I want it to be a specific group. Yes, sir.
Isn't there like some natives out towards the east that look white?
You're talking about, wait a minute, I know who these people are. Yeah, it's a tribe in North Carolina.
Yeah.
But they're not recognized by the federal government, so it's not really and they're one of the largest tribes in the United States. Some of them are black.
Yeah, I noticed some videos on that. Like
Sure.
Sitting around a drum and you're singing
Sure.
songs.
Or you can do it on that group if you want. They're not Western culture. They've got their own North Carolina culture. A lot of them were, I don't know. I don't want to argue ancestry, okay? They consider themselves natives. And I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's not coming to my mind at this point. But Wednesday, I'll tell you who they are. Okay, yeah, sure. Any tribe you want, any group you want, Japanese, Taiwanese, Chinese, Mongolian, Germans. That's West, yeah, they're Western, sure, but it's European. I don't want you to talk about Americans. Or Canadians, they're kind of the same. Canadians are kind of interesting people. I got involved with their educational system a couple years ago, and realized that just because, you know, we're stuck together, Canada and the United States are stuck together, despite that fact, we don't have the same educational system. Theirs is more English than ours is. Ours is one that we've created ourselves in the United States. We've got a different outlook on things. When they ask a question, there's only one answer to it. We're a little bit more flexible in our educational system in the United States. We want to help each other in the United States, so if you're having problems with a select thing, then potentially you can ask Sean and he'll say, sure, here, I'll give you my notes. That happens in the United States, it doesn't happen in Canada. It doesn't happen in Australia, because they have a competitive educational system. So people don't help each other, which doesn't, in the United States, of course, we wouldn't do that kind of stuff. So I hope no Canadians are watching. A Canadian used to work here, remember? I couldn't say anything about this. Okay, anyway, I got some bad news for you. We're going to talk about sex, and I apologize. No, I don't. That has to do with culture as well. Culture has to do with everything. How do you reproduce? And we're going to talk about that, but actually what we're going to talk about doesn't have anything to do with reproduction. It just has to do with sex, as weird as that is. So what is culture? And why do we have to study it in psychology? The reason is because if a Freudian came to the reservation and tried to help you guys out, how successful would they be if they didn't know anything about your culture? And the answer is probably not very successful. One of the reasons that this is so important, that we have a psychology program that is focused on the Dene people, is because you have a different culture. And people that don't understand your culture can't help you if you have a mental illness. Just because it works in Chicago doesn't mean it's going to work in Kienta or Tuba City. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Once upon a time, there was a spate of suicides. I think I've probably told you the story before. Bryan High School in Omaha. They had a bunch of suicides. They had 7 successful suicides, 15 attempts. They had this whole string of suicides. So they decided that they were going to help them. This is Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha is right in the middle of the country. So they brought, and it's a Catholic town. It was a Catholic high school. And I don't know if you understand how Catholics work, but if they can't commit suicide. If they commit suicide, they can't be buried in hallowed ground. Okay, so they can't be buried in the Catholic cemetery. They have to be buried someplace else. That's the way it works. So everybody was up in arms. They were all scared that, the rest of the kids, and they thought they had it tackled at number 3, and all of a sudden they had another one, and then they had another one, and then they had another one. Then they had all these attempts. So they had all these completed suicides and all these attempted suicides at a Catholic high school, and of course the priests were all freaking out because they don't even talk about suicide because it's a taboo subject. It's one of those situations. So they called people in. They called the APA. The APA said, "We'll send you out some volunteers," and they sent out these psychologists from New York City to Omaha, Nebraska. And of course, they started talking to the kids, and they had no clue who these kids were. These were farm kids. These were kids that live in corn-fed Nebraska. And these were New York people who had never seen dirt. They have the only thing they've ever seen is blacktop and cement. And here they are in the middle of corn country. And they have no clue who they're talking to because they're talking to farm kids. They're talking to kids from rural Nebraska, and they've never been outside of New York City, you know, and they have no clue. And they stopped the suicides. They did stop the suicides, but they didn't stop the suicides because they were such wonderful psychologists. They stopped the suicides because people were so offended at the fact that they had no clue, and they wanted them to act like city kids, that they rebelled against them, and that brought everybody together, and the suicides stopped. They didn't stop because they were such wonderful psychologists. They stopped because they were such shitty psychologists. They didn't have a clue what they were talking about. They didn't know who they were talking to. And it works the same way here. Somebody from New York City came and tried to help you guys out for whatever. They would have no clue. A lot of professors that come to this institution from wherever have no clue. And they start talking to you and they don't understand your culture and they fail. And then they leave because they can't stand it here. My neighbor just left. Not because he was a failure, because he found a better job. He's gone. I don't know what happened to his wood.
He gave it to your next door neighbor.
Oh, he gave it to Ed, okay. So that's what Ed's doing over there. I was wondering what he was doing over there. Okay, splitting all this wood. It was all Ken Lucy's wood.
He gave us all the rest of his stuff to us.
Oh, good, okay. Well, he got a really good job. I understand he got a really good job. Okay, well, we both know why he left. Oh, we'll talk about that later. Anyway, it was probably because of this. Okay, that's lady's Chinese. His wife is Chinese. Nice lady, but I don't think she liked it here. Okay, so what are we talking about? We're talking about culture. People from different cultures live their lives differently. You guys live your lives differently from the way that I was raised. I was raised on a farm in Indiana where it's green, it's muddy in the spring. I hate March. To this day, I get depressed in March. Why? Because in Indiana, it's muddy as all get out. You can't get into the fields, and it's cold, and you get snow, and then it melts, and then you got mud. Oh God, it's kind of like it is here, but it's worse because if you're a farmer, you can't get into the field, and you need to plow, and you need to disc, and you need to do all this stuff. Anyway. Okay, so people from different cultures speak different languages, and languages mean a lot. From time to time, Wilson will start talking, and he'll say, "I can't say this in English. I don't know the meaning of this in English." He'll be talking Navajo, and he'll say that. Avery does the same thing. He'll say, all of a sudden he says, "I can't translate this." And it's true. Sometimes, because of culture, things just don't translate correctly. And this is something that we need to be careful of. If you work in the diplomatic corps and you're talking to a Russian, and a Russian says something, and you translate it directly from what he says, a lot of times what he means isn't what the translation is. This is a real serious problem with diplomacy. Sometimes you don't know what they're talking about. Or you misinterpret it because you know the words, but you don't know the meaning. This happened with the Japanese. In Japan, if you understand the Japanese culture is Bushido, it's samurai, it's the guy with not the sharpest sword, but the guy with the most skill. So in Japan, sneak attacks are acceptable, that's acceptable behavior. As a matter of fact, the smart guy will be the one who attacks first. And that's acceptable behavior. In the United States, of course, we have different ideas. So when we first started fighting the Japanese, of course, they had that sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, and everybody was so appalled that they attacked us. It's a sneak attack, Pearl Harbor, oh my God. And people were ready to just butcher all the Japanese because it was a sneak attack. Well, if you understand the Japanese culture, that's acceptable behavior. That's okay. That's normal. That's the way it's supposed to be. So as far as the Japanese are concerned, it wasn't a sneak attack. We should have been prepared for it. We knew they were pissed, and they kept telling us everything's okay. But the Japanese never say no. It's rude to say no. So they'll never say no to you. They'll always say yes. But it's the way they say yes. If they say yes, yeah, that means no. It's the same way with my wife. If she says, oh, okay, that means I don't want to do it. So the Japanese are the same way. So language is really, really important if you think about it. So we didn't understand the Japanese, and so we're fighting these guys, and we're losing. And we're losing because when we intercept their messages, we don't understand what they're talking about. They're saying one thing, and we just don't understand. We were stationed in Japan for, how long were we stationed in Japan? 6 months, I think. Anyway, while we were there, they had an air show. And of course, the Americans are coming in, and everything's making a lot of noise, and they have all these boom, these explosions, and they're flying we had the Blue Angels were there, not the Thunderbirds. Thunderbirds are Air Force. This was an Air Force base. But we had the Blue Angels, and they're in their great big airplanes, and they're making all this noise, and everybody's going, oh, it's so exciting. The Americans are, and the Japanese are going, ooh, it's so noisy, it's so noisy. Then the Japanese aerial team came out. They didn't make any noise at all. They did the same things that the Americans did, but they just didn't make any noise. And they kept making, they had their vapor trails, and they would make flowers. The Americans are making big X's in the sky, and the Japanese are making flowers. It's that kind of a deal. They just have a different culture than we do. Noise doesn't mean anything to them. They don't ever get angry. They try to control themselves. Anyway, so language has a lot. It is very important, and we need to think about that. Sometimes you just don't understand. Sometimes it's not translatable, just like sometimes it's not translatable in Navajo. People have different customs, and we act differently. One of the different customs, and I don't mean to pick on the Japanese, but their custom, how can I say this? The Japanese have different ideas about sex than we do as Americans. People in the United States, or people in the West, I guess. The English, well, they're different too. Something happened last night on a PBS television show. They're making a television show about Sanditon. It was Jane Austen's last novel that she never finished. Anyway, they're televising it, and there's a sex scene in it. But of course, in Jane Austen, it's not like she talks about sex. That's from the early 19th century. My God, she didn't talk about sex. But there was a sex scene in it. Well, then if you go to Europe, after 9 o'clock, all bets are off. There's lots of nudity on the television. This is no big deal as far as they're concerned. So they made this movie, and there was a sex scene in it. There was actually nudity in the sex scene. There was nudity in the show, and then when they brought it to the United States and they showed the same thing, they pixeled out this guy's. He was standing there naked, but you saw him from behind, so you could see his butt. But they pixeled it out. For us, they pixel it out. For them, they get to see his butt. It's just a different customs. So I was talking about the Japanese. I was also talking about the English. There's another sex scene in the show where it has to do with an individual having sex with another individual, but of course it's not genital sex. So it was really kind of an interesting situation. And everybody just got up in arms. Jane Austen would never do that. Anyway, the Japanese, part of their culture is rape. Is part of their culture. They have literature that deals with rape. And that's what it's called. It's called rape literature. Has to do with women being ravaged by men, but it usually has to do with samurais. Samurais, they kill all the men and then they have their way with the women. It's not, they don't really describe the sex, but they say that it happened. And this is part of their culture, as strange as that may seem. So you'll be watching Japanese television, and all of a sudden this man grabs a woman by her arm and he drags her behind a screen. And of course you know what happens. She's screaming and he's talking in Japanese. Different culture. Now here's the weird part. Now here's the strange part. The Japanese talk about sex, they deal with sex all the time. If you've ever been there, has anybody ever been to Japan? Okay. They have graphic, they do a lot of graphic comics. Okay. Teenage girls, and we're talking about 11, 12, 13-year-old girls will be reading this graphic comic book, and there's these sex scenes in the book. And of course you're standing there and you got this little 12-year-old girl and she's reading through this book and you're, oh my God, I don't want to even see that stuff, and here you are, you're reading this stuff. And it's normal, it's the way their culture works. They understand sex, they talk about it, but they don't do it, is the weird part. They did a survey in Japan, and what they discovered was that 32% of all the Japanese over the age of 30 were virgins, had never had sex. 32%. Any idea what the number of virgins in the United States is? 2.5. 32% in Japan, 2.5 in the United States. So they're thinking about it, they're reading about it, but they're not doing it. They may be even talking about it. And that's part of their culture, as weird as that may seem. Everybody eats different food. When I was in Japan, they have a lot of soy sauce. Everything's got soy sauce on it. Eat a lot of fish. Eat a lot of rice. Eat seaweed. Have you ever tasted seaweed? It's bitter. Who would eat that stuff? They would. I wouldn't. I didn't. I had a really hard time in Japan. The only thing I could eat was their noodles. Anyway, well, of course they live right beside the ocean. Only 30% of the Japanese land is habitable. The other 70% isn't. You can't live there. It's volcanic mountains. So nobody lives there except the monkeys. Macaques. I know, it's interesting. Anyway, that's what they... one of the problems that the natives had when the United States government decided that they were going to force everybody onto reservations and not let them hunt anymore was they were giving them food. What kind of food were they giving them? Well, they were giving them beef and vegetables and oatmeal is what they were giving them, which is anybody in Europe would be perfectly happy eating that kind of stuff. But of course it killed you guys because it was too fatty. You weren't used to that kind of food. Your meat was lean. You were used to buffalo. You were used to venison. You were used to rabbits. You were used to turkeys. You weren't used to that fatty beef. You weren't used to pork. It's too fatty. They cooked all their stuff in fatback. Bacon. So they had a lot of grease. You weren't even used to grease, so it killed you. That's the way it works. Okay, so everybody eats different foods. If you go someplace and try to eat their food, then potentially it will make you sick. That's one of the reasons why when people go down to Mexico, they get Montezuma's revenge. They get dysentery. How in the world can the Mexicans eat this stuff if it's contaminated with bacteria? How do they do that? Because they eat chilies, and the chilies kill the bacteria. They've got this stuff in their stomach, and they don't have to worry about it. But if you eat it, you get sick because you don't have the bacteria in your stomach to neutralize that bacteria. Your stomach doesn't have that much stomach acid so that it can kill these bacteria off. But theirs does, So if I eat half my burrito and somebody else eats half my burrito and I get dysentery and they don't, what happened? Well, what happened was I have a different stomach bacteria than they do. Anyway, you can go anywhere and have the same reaction. If you go to Germany, they eat a lot of fatty foods. I mean, everything's got fat. Everything's covered in gravy. If you go to Germany, I know you would think they'd be as big as fat as toads, but they're not fat because of their food. They're fat because of their beer. They drink so much beer, so they have big fat guts. Anyway, okay, so everybody gets to eat different food. This is one of my favorites. Everybody has different religious beliefs. And which one's the right one? My second wife said it was her way. She was a member of a church that this was their symbol, one way. And it pointed up, one way. Okay, and I can't remember one. Maybe it was Church of Christ. Everybody else is going to hell. But she was, she was going to heaven. So Jesus is the Savior. What does that make Buddha? And what does that make Moses? And what does that make the Hare Krishnas? I don't know, the Hindus and the Buddhists. Are they all going to hell? How about the Muslims? Are they all going to hell? You're not supposed to talk about religion. I know. So is it right or is it wrong? Which one's the right religion? Well, Christians will tell you it's the Christian religion, but Muslims will tell you it's the Muslim religion. They used to shoot each other. They believed in the same God. They believed in Jesus Christ, but the Protestants and Catholics used to butcher each other in the streets because they had different ways of looking at the world. One way's right and the other way's wrong. I know, it's stupid. No, it's not. It's religion. What can I say? That's my favorite topic. I love to argue religion. Yes,
when I
ma'am.
was in boarding school, we had Catholic church that used to come over, and there was Protestants. So I didn't know what Protestants was, so I just chose Catholic.
Because you didn't know who they were. Well,
Yeah.
see, you chose. You can't choose wrong. Well, they both worship the same God. They both worship the same Jesus Christ, I guess.
That subject there, I've thought about that as well. History of different religions. My mom was raised Mormon, my dad was baptized in Catholic ways. And I met some other Christians again, and I met some other people from different churches. Some of them even have like revivals.
Sure.
I've asked them about perspectives, what their teachings and everything like that from these different camps or these different groups of religions, what it is that they implement towards people. And some of them talk about different things. Some even talk about people, other churches, this and that. But after analyzing all of it, I come to realize that, when it comes down to it, I think I guess you could say right church is the only one, would be the one that works for somebody.
Right.
With whatever they're looking for.
Sure.
As long as they're peaceful, I guess.
I know. I hate it when they get angry with each other and start punching each other or start shooting each other. That's kind of bad. One of the problems we're having right now is with Iran. I don't know if you understand what's happening here. The Iranians are different types of Muslims. They're Shia. Most of the rest of the world is Sunni. So they both worship Allah, but they worship Allah in a different way. So they don't like each other, and they kill each other. That's what happened after Iraq. We went in and we cleared out Saddam Hussein, and then we declared victory, and all of a sudden the shooting started between these two groups, and they're shooting at each other. They're shooting at us, and we didn't know what was going on. We couldn't figure out what was going on. What was going on was the Shia were fighting against the Sunni. Saddam Hussein had been able to control the sectarian violence between the Shia and the Sunni. He was Sunni, by the way. He was able to control them Iran is Shia, and the rest of the Middle East is primarily Sunni. So, one of the things that's going to happen now, we're not going to blow each other up. We're not going to blow up the Iranians. They're not going to blow us up. What's going to happen is the Shia militia is going to start attacking us. And we're going to lose more and more combat troops we're going to lose more and more men and women in Iraq because they're going to be attacked by Shia militia. Because the Iranians are going to tell them, you know, we're the devil. We're Satan. We are Satan. We represent Satan as far as they're concerned. So it's just going to kick up, and they're going to be picking us off one by one. It's going to be interesting to watch. It's kind of irritating too, because I understand what's going on, and it seems like our president doesn't have a clue. I want to just yell at him and tell him he's stupid.
So it's actually like a difference between two beliefs.
It's just like the Protestants and Catholics. They both worship the same God, they both worship the same Jesus Christ, but they don't agree on how to do it. And the Shia and the Sunni are the same way. You can't put the two of them together. They fight because, well, they fight. Let's just say.
The religion is the cause of these wars.
Right, right. And what did Trump say when he was trying to be elected president? He was saying that Muslims were bad, and we needed to ban Muslims from coming into the United States. We've got millions of Muslims in the United States, and they don't cause any problem whatsoever. Banning them from coming into the United States, well, we won't go into that, but banning them from the United States doesn't make any sense at all. It'd be like banning the Irish because of the Irish Republican Army or whatever. Or making you guys move down to Mexico. That wouldn't make any sense. Well, we won't go into how stupid people are. Different child rearing practices, of course. I was watching a television show last night about Neanderthals. It was on PBS. Fascinating. I'm fascinated with the Neanderthals anyway because my people look like Neanderthals. I had an uncle that could have, he looked so Neanderthal you would have thought that he was a caveman, carrying around his spear, you know, walking around with a hide on. That was my uncle. That's the way he looked. He even talked like, well, I don't know how he talked, but he grunted instead of talked. He just kind of grunted like a Neanderthal. Anyway, they were talking about Neanderthals, and they were saying that they had very little childhood because they had to learn to survive. It was a very harsh environment, and they had to learn to survive. They had to learn how to clean hides, how you did that. So they would hold the hide in their teeth, and they would scrape the hide with a sharp stone. And that's how they cleaned hides, by holding it in their teeth. And they've looked at adult Neanderthals, and their front teeth are worn down, and that's because they were holding on to that hide in order to clean it. And the kids were starting to lose their front teeth as well, because they had to learn it. So they had no childhood. It was different. You know, today your daughter, you got her doing the ABCs and playing, and you buy her toys, you know, but that wouldn't happen with Neanderthals. And it doesn't happen in other cultures. They have to start learning how to be adults. And they said that they matured earlier than modern man because they had to start reproducing fairly quickly because they didn't live very long. So that was a problem as well. They needed to become sexually mature at 9 or 10 years old so that they could start having babies at 9 or 10 years old, because they may die at 21 or 22. So they didn't have a whole lot of time to get this done, to reproduce. Okay. Much about a person's lifestyle can be predicted just by knowing his or her culture. And I think that's really important that we recognize the fact that other people will have other cultures. I'm from Indiana. I'm from a farming family. So my dad was a banker. My mom was a farmer. She was also a nurse. It's kind of cool. My mother was really tough. So you need to understand who people are. You need to understand that they come from a select environment, and that environment has created who they are. And that has to do with culture, the food that they ate and whatnot. When I was growing up, and my mother was cooking, of course, my mother grew up during the Depression, so she was a Depression-era cook. We never wasted anything. She only cooked enough for everybody that was sitting at the table. If you wanted extras, you were SOL. Or she would let you have her food. And she would eat whatever was left over. We cooked it with bacon grease. We cooked almost everything with bacon grease. And that's because during the Depression, they didn't have a whole lot of food. So they needed to take in as many calories as they possibly could. So they cooked everything in grease. And the best kind of grease is bacon grease or fatback grease or grease. Lard. People started cooking in lard. My mother cooked with Crisco, which was half vegetable fat and half animal fat. It wasn't lard. Lard has a specific generic odor as compared to bacon grease. Bacon grease, of course, has salt in it, which makes everything taste better. Anyway, so if we understand your culture, we can predict how you're going to react to things. And that's really important. And that's really what we're doing studying Navajo psychology at this institution. It's not my job to teach you that, though. But I'll mention it whenever I notice it. You just need to know that your culture makes you different than anybody else's. And I understand you not wanting me to talk about the people up north. I understand that. That's okay. They're different Indians. They weren't sedentary. They were nomadic. They were buffalo hunters. And you guys weren't so much. You did kill buffalo, but you didn't hunt like they did. That was their whole culture, was following the buffalo and whatnot. And hoping the buffalo came into their territory because they didn't want to encroach on the next tribe over, the Sioux over there, because the Sioux hated them. They didn't want to encroach on the Crow because the Crow, they didn't get along with the Crow. And they didn't want to encroach, they didn't want the mountain tribes coming down and taking all their buffalo. So they had a bad time with the Shoshone and the Nez Perce. Psychological processes are shaped by experiences, and of course we all have our different experiences. A perfect example is, from time to time we have ex-military people in the class. Their experiences are completely different than anything you guys have ever seen before. Military forces people into a select type of discipline. And those experiences, and potentially they were in combat, and those combat experiences, that fear that you feel anytime anybody shoots at you. I don't know if you've ever been shot at, I hope not. I've been shot at by my spouses, so I'm in trouble. And I've been stabbed by my spouses too, so it's the people that love me that want to kill me, I guess. So I'm hoping you guys don't like me very much. To know me is to hate me, I guess. To what extent should ways of thinking look similar around the world because people share a universal brain? All humans today are very close to each other. Despite the fact that we don't look the same, we don't act the same, our brains are put together almost identically. As weird as that may seem. The most disparate person that you can potentially think about, maybe the not Eskimo, they don't call themselves Eskimo anymore. Aleuts, the Yupik, the Inuits, the people who live up and hunt whales and walruses and seals. They live in a winter environment, or they did. It's climate change is changing. Their summers are longer now suddenly. They used to live on ice, and that was it. That's all they knew, was really cold stuff. But now things are starting to melt. Different way of, their experiences are completely different. You guys live in the desert. my God, it's so hot in the summertime. I don't think I could live in that environment, even though I was stationed down in Lubbock, Texas, over in Lubbock, Texas, which is directly east of here, Lubbock, Texas, just south of the Panhandle on the Llano Estacado. It's where the Comanche live. Interesting place. To what extent should people around the world look different because they have divergent experiences? Here we have a pony, we have a Great Dane, they're the same height, they kind of look alike, they have the same coloring, but of course they're different, totally different species. So just because you have a similar experience to another individual, and this is one of the reasons why people want to study the Mongols, because the Mongols are very similar, or they seem similar to American Indians, but they're not. It's a totally different genetic structure. So one of the things I learned yesterday was that, had to do with Neanderthal genes. They weren't sure exactly, 250, okay. They weren't sure exactly how whether the Neanderthal went away completely or not. Of course, there are no Neanderthals left. They all left us at some point. Somebody killed them all off, or something killed them. Maybe it was viruses, maybe it was violence. We were not exactly sure. We have no written record, so we don't know. But the Neanderthal are no longer with us. But the reality is they are. Because there was interbreeding between modern man and the Neanderthal man. They made babies together. So they traded genes. So all of us have Neanderthal genes. Isn't that exciting? You guys have them, and so do I. Because I don't live in Africa, and neither do you. People that live south of the Sahara Desert have never left Africa. The Neanderthals left Africa. And so it was people who also migrated out of Africa. They're the ones that interbred with the Neanderthal. So if you're Asian or you're European, Neanderthals, most of the Neanderthals were in Europe. If you're European, if you're an American Indian, who else is there? Everybody except the people that are Africans today have Neanderthal genes. It's kind of exciting. We all have different amounts of Neanderthal genes. They said all of us have at least 2% of our genes are Neanderthal genes. Some people have up to 17%, as strange as that may seem. They said if they could take your genes, and they could take my genes, and all the genes of the people in the world, they could create a complete Neanderthal. There would be enough genes to make up a complete Neanderthal, as exciting as that is. So we all have Neanderthal genes, and maybe they express themselves differently in me than they did in you. Maybe that's the reason I can't, opiates don't do anything to me. Maybe that's why, everybody else shoot up with heroin and you just, oh dude, I'm all fired up, man. But me, they give me a shot of morphine, I'm going, when is it supposed to kick in? When is it supposed to kick in? I had my tonsils taken out when I was 20 years old. And it hurts. Tonsillectomy hurts. So they gave me codeine to take. They said, this will take the edge off, this will take the edge off. Didn't touch the pain. You know what helped? Aspirin. Aspergum. I chewed aspergum and that worked. The codeine didn't touch the pain. I had orthoscopic surgery when I was 55 years old. I had orthoscopic surgery and they found out I didn't have an ACL. I don't have an ACL joint or tendon in my left knee. Anyway, so yeah, I know. So they take this garden hose and it's got a camera on it, and they jam it into your knee, and then of course they knock you out, so you can't feel anything. And they're moving it all around, and I know that's the way it feels afterwards. So he's digging around in my knee, and he's cutting off all these chunks of meniscus, and he's trimming my ACL because I popped it at some point. He's trimming it off. And so that night, he says, here's some hydrocodone. When it starts hurting, just take the hydrocodone. So I did. As soon as it started, and boy, I'll tell you what, the anesthetic started to wear off, and oh my God, it felt like the hose was still in there. You know, it hurt like the devil. And so I took that hydrocodone, I got nothing. I got no pain relief at all. So here I am, it hurt a lot. I mean, I just had surgery. It's like having a raw place in your knee. It's horrible. And the hydrocodone didn't touch it. So I had to wait 8 hours, and then I took some Tylenol, extra strength Tylenol, not Tylenol with Darbon. It was just Tylenol. And the pain went away. I was fine. I was good to go. Didn't hurt at all. No pain whatsoever. Hydrocodone didn't touch it. It's because I'm not sensitive to opiates. I don't know if that has to do with my Neanderthal ancestry. I don't know. I have no idea. But I mean, other people, they take a hydrocodone and they're flying as high as a kite. And me, I didn't touch it. Didn't touch it at all. Anyway, okay. So we all have different genes. And just because you guys are doesn't mean that all of you have the same Neanderthal configuration. It has to do with your immune system. Neanderthals had a better immune system than modern man does. Hopefully you have Neanderthal immunity, because Neanderthal immunity will keep you from catching colds or whatever. I never get sick. There's something wrong. I know there's something else wrong with me. I never catch cold. I never get the flu. I never get anything. So I'm guessing it's all my Neanderthal ancestry that keeps me away from it. This is Psy right here. I don't know if you remember this. That was Gangnam Style. That was one of my favorite songs of all time. It's funny. If you know what he's actually saying, of course it's in Korean, but if you know what he's actually saying, it's kind of a funny video. Culture is any kind of information that is acquired from other members of one species through social learning that is capable of affecting an individual's behavior, any kind of idea, any kind of belief, any kind of technology, any kind of habit, any kind of practice. And of course the Koreans are different than we are. They ain't the same. For one thing, they're Asians, but I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Even the Chinese don't agree with the Koreans. The Japanese, they're right across the China Sea. They're just right over there, but they ain't the same. They're just different. I'll tell you what. Let's watch the video. I can't make it. I can show you Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style is really kind of an interesting video. There's a lot of interesting things in that video. He's sitting on the toilet at one point. How many videos have you ever seen where somebody's sitting on the toilet?
I have.
Oh, you know.
Years ago, yeah, this rapper was singing from the toilet.
From the toilet. Well, you probably picked it up from Psy. I'm going to show you another picture of Psy. Here we go. There's Psy with his Korean women. My wife is stationed in Korea. It's a combat tour. As it turns out, it's a combat tour. She's stationed in Korea back in 1993. And one of her jobs was to make sure that they weren't, let's say you go to the bar and you drink half your beer and you leave the rest of it. Well, what the Koreans were doing, they were taking that half a beer and they were pouring it in to another half a beer, making a full beer. Okay. So she had to go in and make sure they weren't doing that. But there were strippers at this bar that she went into. And it was her job to make sure that they weren't having illicit sex with anybody or whatever. They checked them every once in a while to make sure they didn't have any venereal diseases. That was something else they were doing. But it was kind of interesting to watch the Korean strippers, because they would wear clothes underneath their swimming suits. They would dance in swimming suits. Then they'd have body stockings underneath their swimming suits. I mean, it's not like they're actually taking off all their clothes, okay? So they never took off all their clothes. It was just not the way that they did things. So if we look at these, if we look at the video, you can see that they're all fairly well dressed. How sexual is it, all this? Well, this is really sexual as far as Koreans are concerned. As far as we're concerned, we're going, that's sexy? Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of things in that video that are different just because of the culture. And of course, this is one of the most widely seen videos of all time. It has like 1 billion, 2 or 3 billion views or whatever. As strange as that is. Okay. Oh, you ought to look at his next video. It's just fascinating to watch the different culture. He spits on somebody. He pulls the chair out from under a lady, and she sits down on the floor. She misses the chair, and he starts laughing about it. Oh, it's just not nice at all. I mean, it would not be nice for Americans anyway. Oh, I wouldn't. Culture indicates a particular group of individuals. In this case, we're talking about the Koreans. Now, why are the Koreans so much different from the Chinese and the Vietnamese and the Cambodians and the Japanese? Why are they so different? If you look at a Korean, they look different than the Japanese and the Vietnamese, Chinese. You can tell the difference just by looking at their faces. Why is that? What is it about Koreans that makes them so different? Why are they a totally different cultural group? They don't even, the Chinese and the Japanese use the same alphabet. They're pictographs. So they use the same alphabet, but the Koreans have their own alphabet. Why is that? Well, the answer is they live on a peninsula that comes off of China. Okay. So they have their own alphabet, as weird as that. And they look different because they've been isolated from the other populations, as strange as that may seem. They act different because they have their own culture. The first people in Asia to have wheels were the Koreans, as compared to the Japanese and the Chinese. The other cultures were very controlled cultures, and theirs wasn't. Their culture was more innovative. So a lot of things came out of Korea and went to China, and then they went to Japan. Japan was a closed society until the 1840s, and then we forced them to open their ports, and it pissed them off so much that they rejected anything American, and they accepted the English culture, as weird as that may seem. But what does that have to do with anything? Well, when they started driving cars, they started driving on the left instead of the right. So if you go to Japan, it's all left-hand driving. It's really weird. So the Japanese are more like the Brits than they are like the Americans, even though we're the ones that opened up Japan, as weird as that is. Hang on, let me see some more Koreans. Anyway, if you look at the Koreans, they look completely different than the rest of the Asians. Their heads are shaped differently. So if you see somebody who's Korean, you know that they're Korean. If you see somebody Japanese, you know they're Japanese.
Do you think they're like more light complected too?
Yeah, kinda. Yeah. But as strange as it may seem, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Koreans, the Vietnamese, they wear white makeup. They wear makeup that makes them paler. The big insult for somebody from Japan or China or Korea is to be suntanned. They don't do that. The women don't. The men, it doesn't make any difference with the men. But the women don't. Anyway, they're tall and slender. They're actually not tall and slender. They're short and squat. So these are models. Oh, this is too much fun. Culture can be used in a global context. Western culture refers to people clustered from the northern area of Europe. I remember the first time I went to McDonald's in Japan. I remember going to McDonald's in Germany. There's one in Karlsruhe, which was about, 50 or 60 miles away. So we had to eat German food until they opened the McDonald's. Of course, the Germans are different than we are. So the Germans had beer in their McDonald's. So you could buy a beer. And the Dutch had beer too, so that was kind of interesting. I mean, it's not every day you can go into McDonald's and buy yourself a brewski, but that's the way it worked. So Western culture has to do with Northern Europeans. Northern Europe is the United Kingdom. And this is the United Kingdom, of course. This is Ireland right here. The rest of this is Wales, that's Scotland, this is England, and that's Northern Ireland, which are all part of the United Kingdom. So Western culture has to do with the United Kingdom. It also has to do with the Netherlands. I've been there, which is kind of interesting. I met my I divorced my second wife. I met her again, and it's on tape. in the Netherlands, she was stationed at Schusterberg. Oh God, she almost had a heart attack right there on the spot. I never thought I'd see her again. And here she was. All of a sudden, she comes out of the kitchen, and it's my ex-wife. France is part of the Western culture. Germany. This is the actual Cinderella castle. This is Neuschwanstein. Neuschwanstein means New Swan's Castle. That's all it means. But it's in Bavaria. And as you can see, it looks like Disney's castle. Where did he get the idea for Disney's castle? He got it from Neuschwanstein. I've been there. There's only stuff on the first floor. Everything above that, there's nothing. Empty rooms, it's all empty rooms. Kind of funny. Countries with a strong English heritage: the United States, Australia, and Canada. Of course, England as well. This is part of the Western culture. So when we talk about the Western culture, this is what we're talking about. If you look at the ancestry that I have, the United Kingdom, I have English ancestry, and I have Irish ancestry. I don't have Scottish, I don't have Welsh, I don't have Northern Ireland. Well, Northern Ireland is mostly Scotland. But I have Irish, and I have English. I also have, I don't have Dutch. I have French ancestry, and I have German ancestry. Now you got to remember, Germany wasn't Germany until 1870. It didn't become a country until 1870. That whole chunk of Germany was a bunch of little principalities. And the countries around it would come in and conquer them and do whatever they did. You know what soldiers do. They're lonely and they need a girlfriend, so then they make babies. Anyway, so anybody that came along left little children in Germany. So the Germans are mixed with just anybody in the area, pretty much. The Poles conquered them. The Tatars conquered them from Asia. The Scandinavians came down. The Swedes came down and conquered them. They've been conquered from the south they've been conquered from the west by the French. They've been conquered by the Austrians. They've been conquered by everybody and their cousin. So when Hitler decided he was going to say that the Germans were pure, they ain't pure nothing. Everybody and their cousins left little babies in Germany, as weird as that is. Not that that's important. So I have all this really curious ancestry. If you look at my ancestry at select points, I had relatives that went too far west and got captured by the select Indian tribes. Well, this is back east, okay? The Shawnee, mostly. They were captured by the Shawnee. But evidently they didn't, or they left their wives back home, because I don't have any Indian ancestry at all. Despite the fact that I have two relatives that were captured by the Shawnee, and they lived with the Shawnee for an extended length of time, but I don't have any Shawnee ancestry. It's all, I'm just as white as white can be. Gotta be the whitest guy in the world, which is a bit of an insult. You would think that they would, I don't know. They all married their cousins, their next door neighbors. It's just stupid. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Anyway, this is the English part of the world, the United States, Canada, and Australia, plus the UK and Ireland, of course. Subcultures within other cultures, within our culture in the United States. The Jewish culture is a subculture in the United States. 32% of the Jewish people in the world actually live in Israel. But there are more Jewish people living in the United States than live in Israel. 36% of all Jewish people in the world live in Israel. Now, this wasn't true before World War II. Most of the Jewish people, of course, there was no Israel before World War II, but most of the Jewish people lived in Russia, they lived in Poland, they lived in Germany, they lived in France, and then Hitler decided that he was going to exterminate them all. So he tried to do that. He exterminated as many as he could get his hands on, which was about 6 to 7 million. And then after World War II, in 1948, they established Israel. The Israelis established Israel. The Israelis were not supposed to be there. The Israelis, well, there were some Jewish people in Jerusalem, in and around Jerusalem. But it was Palestine. It was known as Palestine. Lots of Arabs there. In 1948, the British decided that they were tired of dealing with the whole Palestinian Jewish question, so they pulled out. And fighting started immediately. Now, there are so many Arabs in the area that they were sure that the Jews would be butchered, that they wouldn't last, that they would all be dead. But of course, that's not what happened. The Jews got pissed. The Jews were angry about World War II. The Jews were angry about the fact that nobody helped them during World War II. And they fought as if their lives depended on it, which it actually did. And they established Israel. And they've been fighting everybody around them ever since. And that's part of the argument even now. The Iranians want to bomb Israel out of existence. They want to bomb them. And of course, this is one of the things that we, as people in the United States, will not allow. Why? Because 36% of all Jewish people live in the United States. It's part of our culture. So how many does that make? Are there more Jewish people in the United States than there are American Indians? About the same. As weird as that sounds. Where do they all live? Well, they don't live in Saley, that's for sure. They don't even live in Arizona. Well, some of them live in Phoenix. Most of them live in New York City. They live along the eastern seaboard.
Don't, like the Amish people, are they related to the Jews?
No. Nope. They're Bohemians. They lived in that portion of Germany that they live south of Bavaria. Okay. The Tyrol. They live in the Tyrol. They're from the Tyrol, the Amish people. Okay. This is what happened. Well, I can explain this to you. I've got time, don't I? This is one of my favorite topics. Once upon a time, there was one Christian church, okay? There was just one church. That was the people that became the Catholics. Just one Christian church. And then in right around 1000, it split in half. And half of them became Eastern Orthodox, and the other half became Roman Catholic. So the question was, where is our headquarters? And the answer was, the Catholics' headquarters was in Rome, and the Eastern Orthodox headquarters was in Istanbul. Okay, now we've got two different Christian churches. The Orthodox Church became the Greek Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Serbian Orthodox Church. They became, all of Eastern Europe became Orthodox. And the rest of Europe became Catholic. But from time to time, the people decided that Catholicism wasn't the right answer. So they tried to protest, and these people became Protestants. Now, what normally happened was that the Catholic Church would mount a crusade they would give absolution to all these knights, all these fighters that went up there and butchered, all the Protestants. So this kept happening through the early 12th, 13th, 14th century. And then in 1517, Martin Luther, who was a Catholic priest, decided that the Catholic Church was so tainted that he had to break away from the Catholic Church. And those people became Lutherans. But before the Lutherans established themselves, the people in Bohemia had tried to break away from the Catholic Church. Zwingli, the Amish, the Hutterites, all of these different groups tried to break away from the Catholic Church. They were Anabaptists. They didn't believe in baptizing somebody until they could could rationalize why they were becoming Christian. So the Anabaptists were another group, and that's the Amish, the Hutterites, the Mennonites, who else is there? Moravians. There's a bunch of them. They were Anabaptists, and that's where the Amish came from. They came from that area of Bohemia. But the reason that they weren't butchered by the Catholics is because they were up in the mountains and they couldn't get to them. I mean, normally they just kind of, march through and take their capital and, kill all their religious leaders, and it was all over with. But they couldn't get to these guys because they were way up in the mountains. They were up in the Tyrol Mountains and they couldn't get to them. So they were able to maintain their own religion. And they were relatively small religions because the Amish, the Hutterites believe that only you have to be a member of this family in order to be a Hutterite. There's 11 original males in this group. And so everybody has, these 11 names. So you'll go to a Hutterite colony and everybody's named Hofer, or Pfaff, P-F-A-F-F, Pfaff, So everybody on this colony's got the same name. And actually they have kind of the same ancestry. So one of the problems that they've had is inbreeding, because they're not allowed to go outside the colony to find a girlfriend or a boyfriend. So if a male wants to marry a female off of the colony, he has to leave the colony to do that. I know we were living in Montana, and we had the North Harlem colony was right there, and they were all Hofers. And really nice people. I mean, they're really sweet people. They call anybody that's not Hutterite, they call them English. We're English. And they spoke German, but they didn't speak the German that I learned in Germany. They spoke, I don't know, it was Old German or High German or whatever. It was really weird. Anyway, fun people. I'm going the wrong direction. Okay, so the Jewish population, no, they're not Jewish at all.
Oh, okay.
Not only that, but the Christian church decided that they needed a Bible, they needed a book, okay? So they went and they put together all the books of the Bible. This is the New Testament. Put all the books of the Bible together. They had to decide how they were going to do this. They had to decide whether Jesus was a God to begin with, whether he was mortal and then became a God, or whether he was a God who became mortal and then became a God again. Okay, they had to decide all of this because it has to do with him dying for everybody's sins. If he was a God to begin with, then he couldn't possibly die, right? I know. This is where Christmas comes from. We have to decide what he is. So in this, they had this big meeting, and I can't remember the date. It's like 235 AD. They had to decide how they were going to put the Bible together and what books would become part of the Bible. The Bible today is not the only religious writings of the Christian church. There are other writings that they rejected. They didn't make the Bible. They didn't make the grade. Okay. So they had to decide who he was going to be, and they needed to decide who were the bad guys. Now they wanted the good guys to be the Romans because they had converted Rome to Christianity. So who were the bad guys going to be? And they decided on the good guys would be the Romans, or the not bad guys would be the Romans, and the bad guys would be the Jewish people. So because of that, they decided that all Jewish people are bad, are evil, and they've been persecuting them ever since. They've been chasing them all over the place. Their whole reason, and I apologize for this, but their whole reason that Isabella had money to send Columbus over to the Americas was because she had kicked all the Jewish people out and stolen all their money. And so she had all this extra cash. And so she gave him some money to come over here. That's the way it works. And this has been happening all over Europe forever, ever since they established Europe. They've been butchering and killing the Jews because, according to them, he killed Jesus. But of course, we all know who killed Jesus. It was the Roman centurion that stabbed him. The Romans were the ones that crucified him. It wasn't the Jews. They just allowed it to happen. Okay. So this was the question. I know, it's such an interesting and silly argument. So this is the reason that you kill people? Because they made this decision 1,800 years ago? And the answer is yes. That's exactly why you do it. Okay, anyway, isn't this fun? Subcultures in the United States, urban cultures, totally different than rural cultures. You guys are ruralists. You live in a rural environment. If you live here, you're a ruralist, unless you come from Chicago or New York or Los Angeles or whatever. If you've ever been around those people, they have different mindsets. They think food comes from the store. Okay. They don't know that you have to kill a cow in order to make hamburgers. They think hamburgers come from the freezer or the delicatessen. They don't understand this stuff. They don't understand that you have to grow food in order for them to cook it. They don't understand this kind of stuff. They think that being around a lot of other people is a lot of fun. There's a lot of urbanists around the world. If you've ever been in Tokyo, which none of you have ever been in Tokyo, it's the most crowded place you've ever been. And somebody will come right up to you and stand right next to you. I know! Don't touch me, don't touch me. It's horrible. Well, it's different anyway. And that's a subculture. It's a subculture in the United States. It's a subculture all over Europe. When Europeans first came over here, they were afraid of the woods. It scared them to death because they didn't have woods over in Europe. They had cut them all down a long time ago. So everything was civilized, everything was controlled, and here they came to this environment where they couldn't see things, and everything was closed up, and it was so dark in there. It scared them to death, so they made all these cities. And the Indians are just laughing at them because they can't walk out in the woods. They can't go anywhere by themselves. Anyway, urban culture. The gay and lesbian culture is another culture. Subculture in the United States, I'm not sure what that is all about. I'm not sure anyway. Anyway, the gay and lesbian culture. High socioeconomic status culture, this is one of the things we're running into right now because of Donald Trump as our president. And he comes from this culture. As much fun as that is, if you've ever been around these people, they are different, they're paranoid, they think everybody's after their money. The most important thing in the world is their money, is money, is money, is money. That's it. And if they can make money, then it's good, it's not bad. And as long as you're making money, then there's no problem with it. As stupid as that sounds, if you've ever been around these people, they buy things. How can I say this? My daughter's baby daddy came from this kind of an environment. I don't know what it is about my daughter. She's a really bad picker, but her first husband was rich. He was wealthy, and he came from this kind of an environment. So, of course, she came from, we were military. We moved all over the place. Sometimes we didn't have enough money for hamburgers, okay? But this guy, he didn't think he had to work for a living. because, you know, in his environment, they didn't have to. Then he joined the Air Force and he realized, oh my God, sometimes I have to do things. As strange as that was. And she married him. I don't know why she married him. And he had a different mindset. He wouldn't work. She couldn't get him to work. He was perfectly happy with her working and giving him all of her money. That made him happy. Didn't make her happy, but it made him happy. Eventually she divorced him because he was a bum. These people are rich. They live behind gates. They don't want other people to get in. They want to only be around their own people. That's what Mar-a-Lago's about. I mean, I can't just go up to Mar-a-Lago, you know, hey, you know, can I rent a room for the night? No, I'm sorry, who are you? Where are you from? You know, do you represent an organization? No. It's not like going to Holiday Inn, you know, they'll let anybody in, but these places they won't. Anyway, high society. Vegans, I don't know if you've ever been around vegans, they're pains in the ass. I can't eat meat. Does it have meat? Was it cooked in any meat sauce or anything? Oh, God. Give me a break. The millennial culture, you guys are members of the millennial culture. I'm a boomer, so this isn't me. I don't know, Batman, Will Smith, Toy Story. The Harvard culture, as weird as that sounds, this is a different college, but if you go to Harvard, oh my God, I'm different from everybody else, and I hate people from Yale, you know. It's just another college, okay? Are they better than everybody else? The answer is they think so. They're wrong, but they still think so. People who are Mac users. I know, what's wrong with those people? Everybody knows that PCs are better than Macs, right? No, Macs are, no. Anyway, people that have iPhones and have Mac computers, they think they're better than everybody else. Or they're different. Trekkies, another subculture in the United States. People that follow Star Trek. Now we have Star Wars. I got to show you one more picture and then we have to stop. These are the bronies. Bronies are people that have My Little Pony. It's guys and girls. And they dye their hair like their favorite My Little Pony. I'm not sure what their names are. Star and, I don't know, My Little Pony. Anyway, they're bronies. And this is a subculture in the United States. If you ever watch Big Bang Theory, those guys are different subcultures. They do video games and they go to Comic-Con and they worship and study comic books. They know all the comic books. It's a different subculture in the United States, and it's kind of nerdy, and that's one of the reasons why Penny made fun of them all the time. Anyway, none of them were bronies, thank God. I don't think the girls walking around here with their hair dyed blue and purple and pink are bronies, but it could, some of them could be. Anyway, the bronies. And we'll talk about this next time. We have to stop right now. As much fun as we're having. And I didn't get into the sexual part. Next time I have to talk about oral sex, and I apologize. But don't worry.